Welcome to Inspire and Move, the show that inspires you to create, connect, and grow. I'm going to bring you meaningful conversations, aha moments, and all the motivation you need to up-level every part of your life. I'm Ali Aruda, founder of Inspire and Move, and your personal hype girl. I've gone from fashion school to celebrity stylist to corporate marketing to brick and mortar entrepreneurship with my husband, each time learning incredible lessons how to pivot, reimagine, and implement the steps to become successful. I am passionate about inspiring others to live their best life, a life of joy. We have the power to design a life that we love because life is too short not to. The best part is that you weren't meant to do this alone. If you feel like you were meant for more, let me ride shotgun with you, and together, let's get you to where you want to go. You guys, you are in for such a special treat for today's episode with today's special guest, Tiffany Cohen. Tiffany is the founder of Spirit and Soul Studio, and she is a Spinal Energetics Practitioner, a soul coach, Reiki Master Teacher, crystal energy therapist, IET Practitioner, intuitive, and Master Manifestor. You are going to want to buckle up for today's conversation because it is all about energy and being in that successful state as an entrepreneur and healing relationships, healing traumas, manifesting, operating in a really high vibration. We have so many amazing elements to this conversation. I am so excited to dive into today's episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Inspire and Move podcast. I am your host, Ali Aruda, and I am so excited to have today's guest join us, Tiffany Cohen. And Tiffany is from Spirit and Soul Studios, and we have been connected by a mutual friend, which I always love connections like that. And I am so excited to dive in to the world that is all things Tiffany and the magic that she has. So Tiffany, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ali. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited to just dive in. I know we were just kind of chatting off camera, off the mics for a couple minutes about what we're going to chat about today, which is so beautifully aligned with work that I'm doing myself personally right now with a coach of my own. And it's so funny how the universe works this way that I got an email from our mutual friend, Chris, and she told me all about you and your world, your business, your brand, and who you help. And it was just so beautifully aligned with a journey that I'm on right now. And I'm so excited for us to be able to share what it is that you do with the Inspire and Move community.
Yeah, I can't wait because I think that the stories themselves, it's something that probably a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, can relate to. So yeah, I'm excited to dive in.
So first things first, you were a corporate girly and now you're into the world of entrepreneurship, the world of energy. Tell us a little bit about what you did in your corporate life, how long, and then let's get into the tea of you transitioning out of corporate and into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so I started in corporate America and I started at the bottom and really worked my way up to running an entire department. I did commercial underwriting, so commercial loan underwriting. And, while I worked with a lot of great people and all the things, it was just, I knew that's not where I was supposed to be for a really long time. And I kept telling myself, well, I don't know what I want to do yet. I don't know what I want to do. And I kept kind of going and cycling around like, I'm not going to leave because I don't want to just go back into banking. Like I want to do something that lights me up, but I couldn't really find what that thing was. And I realized now that I was kind of suppressing what that was for a long time. And I had my lessons to learn while I was there. So, and knowledge to gain. So that was definitely a journey, but like a lot of, I think, corporate environments, it can be a little bit toxic, the energies, working with a lot like really big dollars, it can definitely get very stressful. And I started to kind of hit a wall. I was basically given a beautiful opportunity, but an opportunity to run the entire department, and I didn't want it. And it was kind of forced upon me. I didn't really have a choice to take it. And I took it. And I remember crying every single day for months on my way home, just so unhappy. And, the universe really works in magical ways, and it makes you very, very uncomfortable in order to push you really far out of your comfort zone. And I remember really just like giving it my all. I was working weekends. I had an infant, I had a toddler, and it was just kind of coming down on me. And I had worked the weekend, and I came in, and my boss comes flying into my office, like throws all of the papers, this report that I had put together, all over my desk, and tells me that you better get your shit together, and was like screaming. And I'm like looking around. I have no idea what he's talking about. And he's going on and on about this mistake that I made. And I'm looking at the papers, and I don't see what he's talking about on these papers. And I realize that as he's like storming back into the boardroom, that he read it wrong, that it was like his mistake. So I start running after him to like tell him, but like the door already shut. And this was my moment, Allie. Like, this was where I walked back into my office, and this office that's supposed to be, like an executive thing. And it's supposed to be all the things that you want, right? And I shut the door, and he screamed at me in front of my whole staff, and I could feel their eyes like burning into me. And I closed the door, and the walls started closing in. Like, I was having like a nervous breakdown, which wasn't a nervous breakdown. It was actually a spiritual awakening. And, but it felt that way. And I everything was closing in, and I'm looking around me, and I'm saying, and I hear the voice, like, how the hell did I get here? How did I get here? And I keep asking myself this question over and over again. And I knew in that moment that I had to make a change. So that was it. I couldn't just walk out, though, because I supported my family. But in that moment, I made the decision to change my whole life, that I was going to become an entrepreneur. I didn't know what yet, but I knew it was going to be something. And I just said, okay, what am I good at? Okay, I'm good at cooking. Okay, great. I'm also a great writer, starting a food blog. So I started that night. I left, and I started a food blog. I bought the first name that came to mind. I allowed in this moment, now when I look back on it, I was allowing the universe to speak through and work through me and to guide me. Mm-hmm. And I just started this food blog. It was terrible, but I started it, and I kept going though. And I got mentors, and I learned all the things about what it was to become a food photographer, a food blogger. And I kept saying that I knew this wasn't my final stop, that it was a stepping stone. And I remember my dad always asking me, like, all right, this is great and all, but like, what do you do? What are you going to do with this? And I'm like, I don't know, but I know it's a stepping stone into the right path. And I just let it. And as I was doing that, I was finding myself, right? Like, I started meditating. I started coming back to a version of me that existed long before I started in corporate. I was a Reiki healer. I went through college. I was, reading tarot cards and developing my intuition in psychic fairs. And I kind of went back into things that felt really good to me. So I started that meditation, and I started being guided and led. And now, as really an adult, I'm seeing things with different eyes. I'm opening up in different ways. I'm not scared by the things that were coming up for me, like these, visions and stuff. And I started to see that really the spiritual side was guiding me. And as I let myself be guided there, I left food blogging behind and really started to lean into really spiritual business coaching is where I started, because I did get that food blog off the ground. I was working with big companies and all the things. And I started to really see how I let the universe guide me along the way. And if I combined this aspect of energy with the aspects of strategy, that it was creating a really beautiful business, and pretty quickly. So I just kept going. And as I allowed myself to be led, it turned into a virtual studio of spirit and soul, where we were opening up people's eyes to their own magic, teaching them about manifesting, about all the things. I was running, spiritual business coaching groups. And then we just let it into a physical location. And now we do both. Now we have this physical location, we have a big virtual presence, and we do everything, everything that we started out doing, we bring it forward. So that virtual aspect is still a part of our classes. And here we are now. And it's been an amazing ride, and it's such a great adventure.
I am obsessed with this story. This is so powerful. I also have to ask, what was the name of the food blog?
It was called What You Cooking Good Looking.
That's amazing.
It
Can
no
I
longer
still find
exists.
it?
No, you can't. It no longer exists. My family is very upset about this because they were getting all the recipes still from there. But it just was, at that point, I wasn't doing anything with it. It was costing more money than I needed to pay, honestly.
Fair. Well,
Yeah.
for what it's worth, my husband has a food Instagram. If we haven't made it to a blog yet, but it's called Biceps and Brussels Sprouts.
Oh, that's fun.
So, a little bit of an energetic match
I
there.
love
Like,
that.
good looking, biceps, healthy food. Okay, so that was my burning question that I had to get off of the top, had to get it off my
Yeah.
chest. Now, I also have so many questions about your energy work. So, you were already into energy work at a younger age, going through university. You mentioned Reiki, which I think is so fascinating. And so, is that something that you did, but then you got away from when you started your corporate career?
Yeah. So when I started corporate, I would do it for myself. I would do it, I wouldn't go and seek clients out, but I was doing it for myself. At the time I was like living at home. So that was like something that was a little bit harder. It was kind of just working on my family and, my boyfriend at the time, now husband, and just really working with it in that way. And then once the pandemic hit, honestly, it's amazing because I have my best friend, Christina, who we really got close because she lived across the street from me, but I never had time to like hang out with her, get to know her and her daughter, and all the kids played. Like we live in a court, and as with the pandemic, I was spending so much more time at home. So like I remember she came up to me one day and she's like, I never really like saw you outside before, like you don't really hang out outside so much. I'm like, yeah, I'm like working a lot. And then we started talking and she said, oh, I'm a Reiki master. So that really kicked up again. And she said, if you would like to I said, I actually did Reiki and I would like to get recertified. So it really started with her and kind of guiding me through. And then she became my integrated energy therapy master. And that's like healing with the angelic ray. And the conversations that I was having with her really kickstarted me going back into healing again. But yeah, it was really, really that relationship that kicked it back up. And once I started, the draw came back again, like that opening of, oh, right, I can hold space for people and I can do this in a different way. So I started to do it. I started to do it virtually. And then once the pandemic, eased up a little bit, I started doing it from my home. And I was helping a lot of people, but then that journey really kind of took a different turn as I got introduced to spinal energetics, which is really my forte now. That's really where that's all that I work on at the shop. I use spinal energetics mostly. I use Reiki every day for myself, but spinal energetics at the shop. And spinal energetics is a way that we're working with the nervous system. So the energy of the spine. And it's
Tell me more.
fantastic. Yeah, it is fantastic. So the thought process behind spinal energetics is that as we go through our lives, we take on, through experiences, through even just like watching things on TV that really bother us. It could be that we've witnessed things. And as we go through life, we start to form these it's what they're called samskaras, but these energetic knots within our body. And they actually will form, you can actually feel them like in your neck and everything. And these little knots in the body and also in the energetic field. And when we actually go in and like unlock them and start to allow the energy out, because just to say your energy field does not want these things and these
Yep.
become your energetic anchors in life to manifest the things you want. So once you start to unlock these energy anchors, let's call them, suddenly your body will start to begin to move. it can move anyway. Some people don't move. Some people are their internal processors. So they will just lay the whole time and get up and be like, whoa, like that was a lot. And then other people though, that will begin to move. So if you've ever seen like the Goop Lab, there was a Dr. John Amaral was on there. This is similar, but different. Okay. Spinal energetics is different than that. But once I saw that, I knew that I just had this like feeling in my body that was like, you can already do this. So I found spinal energetics through that. And if you've seen that, you've seen like Juliana, she's the dancer. I can't think of her name.
Juliana Huff.
Juliana Huff. Yeah. If you've seen her, like you see the body's moving. There's emotional releases. There could be screaming or crying or laughing, all these different things. I've seen it all. And that is the energetic release from the body. And when you start to let those things go, you create space. You create space now for flow. You create space for this beautiful energy that's now no longer held back by these like anchors. And then what begins to happen is the body goes back into a state of wholeness. It remembers what it's like to be whole without these blockages or, these energetic anchors.
This is fascinating. And the healing the nervous system is something that I'm sort of trying to create more space for, if you will, in my own life I always like to say, I refer to myself as a high performing entrepreneur. So that's even some of my questions for you with relation to spinal energetics. Who is it for? And I feel like it's probably for everybody.
Everyone. Yeah. I will say everyone that's willing to receive, right? Like you have to be with any type of healing, you have to be a willing participant in it. So if you're not willing to face the things that come up, or you're not willing to get emotional, you're not willing to cry, you're not willing to feel those things or to let those things go. Because sometimes we just get in our own way by not allowing them to go. Right? Mm-hmm. Like we could say, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't want to feel like this anymore. But then you're not really actually willing to let go of the energy that's holding it there. You're not willing to let go of the people. You're not willing to forgive. You're not willing to do what it takes to actually fully let it go. So I will say you do need to be a willing participant in your healing journey. I have many, many, many women that are like, Tiffany, I am bringing my husband to you. I'm like, he needs a lot of healing. I'm like, I get it, but you have to make sure he's okay with this.
Yeah, I'm signing him up for this because he needs it, and he's going to come kicking and screaming. So work your magic, girlfriend.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God. So you have to be willing.
So you have to be willing. And yes. This is so new for me. Like I love learning new things, especially when it comes to energy and, being a better version of ourselves. But for everybody listening, that's probably like, what is spinal energetics? So we're sort of tapping into that. But what is it in terms of the process? Like how long is a session treatment experience? How often would I come? And let's start there. Cause I was like, I have more questions, but let's start with those two.
Yeah. Okay. So, sessions they can last anywhere between 20 minutes to an hour. And that just depends on how the person is processing and where they are in their journey, because there's different levels of spinal energetics. So if you're getting like the highest level of spinal energetics, that is more of like a ceremony and that lasts longer. There's a lot more actual subconscious program rewriting that's happening there. So, I'm talking to you kind of about the basic spinal energetics, but there is a level up that really starts to rewrite the programming. But in order to do that, you have to start to let go of the traumas, right? The big T traumas, small T traumas, all of the things, all of that energy has to really start getting worked through before you can make it to that higher level. So those last about an hour, but you're coming in for your first time. I always block out about 45 minutes just for talking and things like that. But they usually last about 20 to 30 minutes.
And they're one-on-one?
Well, I do them all different ways, honestly. So you can do it one-to-one. You could do it virtually. And you could do it, so it's in-person virtual, or I do them in groups. So I can do them in small, intimate groups, or I honestly make them part of my classes a lot of times. So I teach a lot of classes at Spirit and Soul. I've worked on 70 people at one time, but that's a different experience than like when you're on the table, right? So it's a lot lighter. I'm not getting in as deep as normal, but it's there. Like the energy's there and you're still letting go. So there is a way that you can do it in many different formats.
And now you're talking about, someone being on a table. Is it manual or is it all energetic, or light touch, kind of more of like Reiki experiences?
Yeah, it's definitely hands-on for sure. Hands-on and hands-off. It's a little bit of both. But we usually, you can activate the person that energetic knot. You can activate it actually physically or energetically when I'm doing something virtually. It's not going to have that hands-on, but it kind of feels like it does.
And you referenced, the big T traumas, the small T traumas, and how naturally this sounds like something that everybody would benefit from. But is this something that, even trying to be a bit more specific for people to even have like little nuggets to take away here? Is it stress? Is it loss of a parent, sibling, child, pet, loss of a job, divorce, friendship breakups? Like, are those all things that you could come and have an experience with you and say, Tiffany, I need to be healed based off of this trauma?
Yes. So really everything goes. And yes, this is for everybody. I'm going to say everybody needs it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody does need it. And the thing with all of that, right, is you can come in with, an expectation. You're like, I just want to get over this person, or I just want to, be done with this. But when we're really going to look at it, I would look at it differently, right? There's all the experiences in our lives are happening for us for some reason. And when we start to look at it karmically, right, we end up in these karmic loops. So chances are, as an adult, you've been through that same situation that you're thinking you're coming to me for multiple times. And really what we want to do, while we want to let go of any type of trauma at any stage, we really want to look at the first time it happened, because that's what kicked off the karmic cycle that you're kind of in now. It's always like, right? Like, so think of it like this. Think about a person that always ends up with like the wrong guy, right? Like, I always attract the wrong guy, the wrong this, the wrong that. And it's like, why do you keep attracting them? Why do you keep ending up in these cycles over and over and over again? For me personally, I was in a cycle of betrayal in friendships, right? So I was in this cycle and I'm like sitting there and I'm like, how do I keep ending up here? Right? Like, how do I keep ending? And I had to really go back to the first time that I was betrayed by a friend, which I had to really figure it out. And to be honest with you, Allie, I just figured it out today while I was getting my nails done. Yeah. So, all right. So the betrayal really first started the first one. I'm thinking anyway, I have to do a little bit more sitting with this, but the first time I had this betrayal was I was friends with this girl. And I remember that I had like broken my finger and it was just healing. And I remember this girl, I think she was like, I don't know if she was a little bit jealous of me or of my like home situation, because it was, I don't know, it was a happy home and things like that. And I don't know what her real situation was. And I kind of was sitting with this today and I realized that I think there was more going on than I knew. And she accidentally like stepped on my finger again,
Come on.
yeah, accidentally. And I remember we were supposed to go and do something that night. And I was like, I don't think that I could. Like, I was kind of shaken up because it just really started healing. I was in pain now. So I'm like, I can't go. And she had her like friend from next door call me and tell me that she was going to like kick my ass at this thing or whatever and all this stuff, because I left the girl with like no one to go to this fair with or whatever. And I remember that kind of hit me today as like, that's like a big betrayal. Like, you were my friend and then you kind of like try to instill fear. For what purpose, right? I don't know. And I kind of have to sit with it a little more. But that really kicked off a cycle of betrayal in friendships that led to a big one, even with my like former business partner that I had. So yeah. So it lasted a while, but I'm cutting that off now. I'm stopping that karmic loop.
I love how you refer to it as karmic loop. And I have always loved this conversation because I can relate. I've shed some friendships over my years, whether it's, university, young adulthood to like here I am now, 38 years old, and it's been a journey. And one of my one of my best friend, Rochelle, had always told me that friendships come for reasons, seasons, and lifetimes. And I've done a whole podcast episode on this as well, that I love that topic. And as soon as I sort of really understood that and I sat with that, it gave me a little bit of peace and grace that I could even almost be more compassionate for some friendships that faded away, where it's like, maybe this was the reason that what came into her life to help her through this, and try to find some peace with that for myself. But it is really interesting what you're saying about how, maybe that's something for me personally in this, or for you, we've worked through it mentally, but yet it has still remained in our body physically and energetically, that needs some TLC and needs to be cleared.
Yeah, I mean, so what happens with that? And you're right on, Allie. Like you are right on, because there are many different layers to your energetic field. And what happens, and you see this often, where when someone's on a healing journey and they're like, oh, something starts coming up and they're like, I healed this already. And it's like, well, like what happens is you healed a layer of it, right? So if we have many different layers, we have our physical layer as being the most dense. We have our emotional layer, our mental layer. We have a spiritual layer, which is like how we connect with people in the world around us. And then we have our soul layer. So how we're connected to the universe, source, God, whatever name you like. And what we have to understand is that the same issue, right? The same thing you go through in life can get caught in all the layers. Mm-hmm. So just because you heal at one time, so you just said, like, we might understand it mentally, but it may be in the physical body. It may be in the emotional body. It might be in all of them. So now you start so like healing is really cyclic. It's spiralic, right? So it's like you kind of like hit one layer, and then you kind of, then you start working through that, maybe let go of the energy of that. And then you loop back around, and now you're healing it from the emotional layer. And then you're healing it from the spiritual layer. And you'll notice, if you actually tune into it, you'll notice that the same issue comes up differently. So it doesn't come up the same anymore. It comes up with another thing or another layer to it. And you're like, oh, well, okay, I have to now sort through this part of it. And once you get to the bottom, like you kind of know, like I have experienced where what I call it, like it's like a soul contract closing, right? So like you've created a soul contract with somebody before you get here, and that closes. And I felt it. I heard it. I felt it. I witnessed it, the chapter close on that. And I don't have that hasn't come up for me. That issue hasn't come up for me in the longest time. I think of it and I don't have the same electric charge around it anymore. So there is a closure. Like you can get true closure on things. You just have to be open to healing all the different layers and not keep like shoving it down.
And when you say, I love that you reference the word closure, because I think that word does have so much power and significance. But is it possible to seek closure? Let's use a friendship, for example, that has come to its term. And is that something that you can seek closure with as a individual? Like, I can seek closure from a past friendship on my own versus having a, conversation. Because I think a lot of people think that closure, whether it's friendship, business relationship, or a romantic relationship, needs to be a face-to-face or a phone conversation where, like you and I are having this beautiful conversation right now, that it needs to go from person A to person B. Is it possible to seek closure of the utmost significance on your own?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's actually really important to do that. I do, because no matter what, you're having a conversation with somebody and you're still having a conversation with their ego. So there can be things that are hidden from you. There can be things that you just don't know about, that you don't understand, right? Because we'll never truly fully know another human being, right? Like you could think that you do, but like you never know the little things that are going on in their mind, in their heart, how they're feeling. So I do think it's important that, well, if I'm going to say it like this, if you find it important to have the conversation, actual physical conversation with the person, then I think it's warranted, necessary, needed, right? But I also think that there are ways to work through it differently. I think you can. I actually love this. One of my friends and teachers at the shop, Erica, she always talks about, she works with people's higher selves, because if you go into the energy and you start to work with their higher self, now what you're doing is you're not dealing with the ego, right? Like you're dealing with them on their highest level, and you can get more answers from them there.
I love that. It's funny. I was just talking to my husband, and I own a gym, and we were working out with one of our trainers this morning, and she and I were having a whole conversation about your higher self and dressing and how you can embody with personal style to be your higher self. And I love this example that, Erica references in your shop. And I think that's amazing. I was going to even ask you, are there any tips? You sort of reference that there's things that we can do. If you could even just give like 2 or 3 tips that if somebody wants to seek closure in a situation, in a relationship on their own and work, at a distance on their own, what could they do?
Yeah. So I would first start by, honestly, first things first, let's honor the friendship, right? Because oftentimes we get caught up in what someone didn't do, and all of that. And I think what is missed is that there's so much time before that you love that person, and you're so hurt right now, or you're feeling like a piece is missing because there's a bit of grief there. Right. So I think let's first honor the friendship and honor the person. And if that feels too painful for you, do it when you're ready. Right. But if it feels too painful to honor the friendship in the moment, then I think you need to kind of wait on the healing process. I don't think that healing has to be done immediately. I think you do need time to process and sit with the different energies in the body and how they're coming up emotionally. But once you're ready, I think the first step is honoring the friendship, honoring what was there, and starting to really see, right? Like kind of like looking at the situation and seeing like, okay, well, where are we different? Because where did the energy become off, right? Because what brought you together, it's law of attraction, right? This is a law of attraction thing. There's no getting around this, right? Like attracts like. Mm-hmm. So at some point, the energies were there to bring you together. Now they're not there. So whether you shifted and now you're at a higher level frequency and the other person never changed, never did anything about it, you can start to then unfold it. Forget about the things they did or did not do in this moment, because that's all egoic, right? But looking at, well, what fell apart here? Like what made us different? Right? What made the energies different? Starting to understand it in that way, I think allows you to start to let the person off the hook a little bit, like kind of like really taking the view of the soul rather than the view of the ego. And that's hard. That's why I say you kind of have to wait it out, because that is very hard to do when you are hurt. Okay. So once you're able to see it with the eyes of the soul is what I call it, and start to lift up the perspective in a bird's eye view, you can start to see that while the things, if anything was done to you, while the things that were done to you may not have been okay, or they might not have been right, you can kind of start to understand the other person a little bit more. And once you can start to understand them, I feel like from there, you start to go through the closure process. And I think that closure is a process. Like, I don't think it's going to be one thing. I think it's a spinal energetics. I think it's coaching sessions. I think it's taking classes and understanding, like, where are you in a karmic loop right now? Like, what is this? What were you meant to learn from this, gain from this? Just like your friend Rochelle said, right? Like, it's, your friends are there for reasons, seasons, and like they're with you forever, right? Yeah, in lifetime. So, what was the reason? If it had to happen, if it had to go down like this, what was the reason? What were you meant to learn, gain from this? Right? And starting to understand that.
Thank you so much for listening. If you love this episode, it would mean the world to me if you took 30 seconds and shared this on social media, send it to a friend, or leave a 5-star review. There is power in community, and I am so grateful to have you part of mine.